So, just a little bit of a heads up before getting into this video. I'm recording this a day after well, actually a couple of days after I recorded this video. I finished editing it like last night. As you guys can see right here, it's pretty much finished. The ending. And I don't know how closely you guys can see that, but it's a 21-minute video right there. So, I just thought that it would be sort of best to give you guys a little bit of heads up. It's going to be a long one, and the latter half, after say, I guess maybe like I want to say 15 minutes, like 15, 20 minutes, or 15, 10 minutes into the video is pretty much the first half of like before I end up going on a bit of a rant, because this is kind of a rant video, but at the same time, the first part is more of the informative part, and now it's going to be 22 minutes into this video already. So just a little bit of a heads up. If you guys don't want to watch the whole thing, completely understand, but I'm going to leave this up for my own sake in the future. You guys want to watch all of it, go right ahead. Of course, I'm not going to stop you from doing that, but I don't know where to say to stop, per se. So yeah, watch at your own expense if you want. You know, if you don't want to, I mean, hey, from my own references, honestly. So otherwise, enjoy. I've been wanting to do a video on this for a while now, and it's specifically because, especially this team right here, they disappoint me more than any of my other favorite teams. And so I figured we start off this video on a bit of a nice note. At least a nice note for me, because I get to go along with some of the other A's fans that were optimistic about this team, and that we tried to tell you guys that this team was going to be good. And as you guys can see right here, it'll probably pop up on the screen, the NBCS Athletics page is going to post the over-under for the A's to start the 2018 season. It was 74.5 wins, and as you can see, a lot of people said that they would go over that amount. A lot of people said that they would battle for a wildcard spot. Of course, you're going to say bias this, bias that, but let's be honest here. There's this one comment actually that puts it very nicely. There were a bunch of errors, unearned runs, and I mean the bullpen was very sketchy with Casilla once they got rid of him, or once he got demoted from his closer role, because they started doing better, which usually came after Trinan was acquired. And in general, I mean, Casilla, he contributed to at least 5 losses during that year. And if they had won those 5 games like they were supposed to, then they would have had no more than 80 wins. So this team was one that had some potential, especially to the run that they had at the end of September. Now, granted, that doesn't always go for teams' benefit, and teams that do poorly in September don't, or sometimes will tend to have good seasons, a la the Braves of last year. But this success wasn't very hard to see. I mean, who would have thought that a young hitting core and a promising hitting core at that, to go along with some solid hitting depth and a really good bullpen, would be one that would compete for an AL wildcard spot? Who honestly thought that? There was actually an MLB.com article that talked about how they have some sneaky upside for 2018. So this success wasn't very hard to see coming. I'm just saying. David Force said that he expected the team to be in wildcard contention. I believed him when he said that, and he was right. But of course, that is where all the positives end. And now that I've sort of made myself seem like a bit of a sarcastic fuckhead, I'm going to talk about the lowlights. Just had to get that in real quick, because people always say that this team is going to fail because, lowest payroll in baseball, your team was always going to suck, And it specifically comes from Angels and Giants fans. Two of the best fan bases out there, Angels and Giants fans, two of the best fan bases in all of baseball. Just always excellent to see that they have a good knowledge of baseball when they say that the A's fail because of low payroll. But anyways, that's sort of what I'm getting at here. What I'm getting at is that this team fails because of other reasons. It's not necessarily because of payroll. It's because they don't do enough to become World Series contenders. This offseason is continuing to show that. They're doing pretty much what they did in 2013. Billy Beane at that is doing pretty much what he did in 2013, making some solid acquisitions, but at the same time still not recognizing the bigger issue, which is the game plan structure, and it was apparent throughout this entire season. It was apparent from 2012 to 2014. It was apparent throughout all their playoff failures. The main reason that I'm talking about is that situational hitting is a foreign concept. It has been a foreign concept to this organization for the longest time. They consistently rely on the home run ball. Darren Bush is not qualified to be a hitting coach. He was a bullpen coach before, and he was turned into a hitting coach. I don't know why he's a hitting coach, because he was getting bailed out all season long throughout that. I mean, 2018, they reached their goals. It was about coming back onto the map, in a way, coming back onto the map. But the same reasons as to why they failed beforehand are why they became a first-round exit or a wild card exit. When we go back to 2012, situational hitting, foreign concept. Cespedes was one of the only players to show up in that series versus the Tigers, and they were owned by Justin Verlander. But still, 2012, it was about getting back on the map as well. So they made some small improvements in 2013. Some were failures, like Chris Young, massive failure. But Jed Lowry ended up working out a bit. And in general, they were a team that looked better going into 2013, or looked like one that could at least do better offensively, with Josh Donaldson being a guy that looked like could be a potential difference. Well, I guess more so a potential impact player on that lineup going into 2013, because outside of Cespedes and Reddick and Moss, there weren't really many players. I mean, you did have a few guys that could field, but weren't as good hitting-wise. So, some nice pieces in the lineup to work with. But once again, they are an ALDS exit. Failure of a season this time around, because they didn't even make it to the ALCS. The hitting depth just became non-existent, and Cespedes was one of the only consistent playoff performers in that series as well. And so, 2014 comes. They make a few other improvements. They actually got rid of Balfour, because Balfour was a staple. I don't know, but Jim Johnson came in and he was a hot mess in that bullpen. He was terrible. But even then, they had the starting pitching, because Scott Kazmir, he came in and he was an absolute steal of a free agent acquisition. Acquiring Jeff Samardzija and Jason Hamill, that was a good trade. As you bolster the rotation, you have Scott Kazmir, and you have Jeff Samardzija, and you have Sonny Gray, and you have Jason Hamill. That should be your four-man rotation going into the playoffs. Jesse Chavez could be a guy that comes out of the bullpen. And, I mean, pretty much the only issues were pretty much lack of hitting depth, but I guess more so just the hitting core underachieved. It could have used another player like a Ben Zobrist, got him a little bit too late, waited until next season to do such, or, that upcoming offseason to acquire a player like Ben Zobrist. Or better yet, find a hitting coach that understands the concept of situational hitting, because that could have helped him out. And so Billy Beane continued to go all in at the deadline, and he made, at the time, looking at this trade, even at the time, I was like, this is not a bad trade at all. The problem is that it was ridiculously ill-timed. And I'm talking about the Yoenis Cespedes trade. It jackknifed team chemistry. You strengthened an already strength. John Lester, that was just an unnecessary acquisition. You already had the rotation set with Gray, Kazmir, Samardzija, and Jason Hamill going into the playoffs for a four-man rotation. Jesse Chavez would be like the fifth starter during the regular season, a guy that you could put in the bullpen for the postseason. And in general, you didn't need to do that trade for John Lester. You didn't need to ruin the lineup to strengthen a rotation that was already very strong. That's something that you do in the offseason. You don't do that when you're leading the division and are in a race for a playoff spot. In a race for the AL West division, even at the time. After that, they decided to collapse, and they barely made it into the wild card. I don't know how they made it into the wild card. They were almost giving the wild card to the Mariners. But when it comes to the Cespedes trade, Billy Beane ends up going into damage control at the end of the season when they make it to the playoffs, and he says that he doesn't believe that they make the playoffs without the Cespedes trade. This has to be a joke. There is no way in hell that you actually think that. He's just pretty much just proving my point. Why I call this team professional baseball's delusional misconceivers, because that's exactly what they are. They misconceive their fan base into thinking that things will change, or that they are going to be a World Series contender with these acquisitions and also making the playoffs. But when it comes down to it, they don't know how to put together a team that will compete for a World Series title, that has a game plan to work to compete for a World Series title. On paper, it could be one that could go far in the playoffs, but without the proper game plan and the game style, you're not going anywhere. It was proven from 2012 to 2014. I mean, you say that if you don't make the Cespedes trade, you don't make the playoffs. I mean, what the f*** is that? Honestly, what is that? Never mind the fact that they were leading the division before you made that Cespedes trade, and that they barely made it into the wild card after you made that trade, and that was really because the Mariners just decided to completely choke on their own selves. Never mind the fact that, well, situational hitting has been a foreign concept in this organization for the longest time. Never mind the fact that second base was a massive hole and you're stuck with Eric Sogard starting there. Never mind the fact that you probably could have moved Tommy Malone for, say, Ben Zobrist, or, maybe another prospect added into that trade for a Ben Zobrist to solidify the second base position and bring in a number 2 hitter that fits really well in the Yodako Coliseum, and sacking Chili Davis because, like I said, situational hitting, foreign concept. Foreign concept. It's why they failed in the postseason. It's why they failed this past year. It was on full display this past year, and now that is where we're going back. So in 2018, the Oakland Athletics reached goals. But we're back in 2018, and situational hitting, or a lack thereof, was on a full display once again. It was noticeable throughout the year. Darren Bush was getting bailed out with his ineptitude when it comes to getting players to hit with runners in scoring position. It was on display all year. Does anybody remember when the offense dried out when Chris Davis went down? Because I sure as hell remember when that happened. The offense was completely stagnant, and they didn't get anything going until June. As a whole, everything was clicking, and Darren Bush was getting bailed out for his ineptitude when it comes to hitting with runners in scoring position, relying on the home run ball so much, having starters that play over their heads, and also having a very dominant bullpen is what led to success to this team. I had a hard time seeing how people could think that the A's would beat the Yankees, because pretty much the Yankees had the edge in everything except for depth, and maybe you could say managerial structure. You know what? Honestly, yeah, I'm going to give that. I'm going to give managerial structure to the A's, honestly. I'm going to give it to Bob Melvin. Even though he does some things that are a bit questionable, I still think he's a better manager than Aaron Boone. This past wildcard game, I mean, it's not even really his fault. Even for Mike Fiers, I don't really think that was such a bad decision to not start him, because fly ball pitcher in Yankee Stadium, recipe for disaster. I just think that he could have opened with a better arm, and honestly, that's no question that he could have opened with a better arm than Liam Hendriks. But with the wild card, the only offense to speak of came from Chris Davis with a 2-run home run, and it was on full display. Hitting with wrist. They had bases loaded with 1 or no outs, I think, at one point, and they did not get a single run home. So yeah, I mean, the problems were that they didn't spend as much of the Yankees. Those were the definite problems. I mean, yes, they were an inferior team. I said that going into the wild card game. I was saying that for the past few months, or the months before going into that wild card game, that they were the inferior team to whoever they play, whether it be the Yankees or the Red Sox. And, I mean, it was on display. It was on display on the wildcard game. Lack of situational hitting, relying on the home run ball. I'm convinced that Darren Bush's clipboard reads swing for the fences and nothing else, because that's what it seemed like. And this team, although had a really good season, just still are showing the signs that they are a team that is inept when it comes to postseason success. And I keep mentioning situational hitting because more teams need to understand this concept. Far too many strikeouts, far too many teams going for the home run ball. Did you guys see how good the Red Sox did last postseason? It was because they didn't just hit the home run ball. Situational hitting will lead you to success. It was also proven by the Giants, world champion winners. There's not a single team without a hitter that hit at least 300 in terms of batting average, aside from the 2016 Cubs. And even then, they had 2 hitters hit for 290. Walks, they're definitely useful. Working the count on a pitcher is definitely something that's useful, but hits are more useful when it comes to getting runners home. Situational hitting, I don't understand why it's such a foreign concept. It's been used by the past few World Series winners, so that's something that teams should follow suit in. Hence the Oakland Athletics, they should follow suit in situational hitting. And for A's fans, even though there are plenty of mindless Giants fans out there, there are also some knowledgeable ones. they know for a fact that the Giants teams were built on situational hitting when it comes to producing on the offensive end. Definitely built on pitching and a solid bullpen and a good manager in Bruce Bochy. But in a ballpark like AT&T Park, you definitely need to focus on situational hitting before power hitting, because you are not, if you try and focus on power hitting in AT&T Park, you are going to fail. I mean, I don't know about the early 2000s. I mean, I can't speak on that front. And, you know, honestly, I mean, I'm sure Giants fans are going to refute that previous statement, but focusing on power hitting as your main part will not end well in AT&T Park. And so, circling back to the offseason, they've made some moves to improve this team. And going into last season, I held off on uploading this video because, like I said, I was bullish on this team going into this season. I was bullish on them last March and last February even. So I figured I would just hold off on this video because maybe this time would be different. But so far, they're showing the signs that this is going to be the same thing that they did last time. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see Chris Davis traded at the deadline, to be quite honest. Mainly because of the fact that he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year, and it's just, if they fall flat, I expect Billy Beane is going to try and liquidate the core again because, of course, as the Marlins can attest, liquidating your fan favorites and liquidating your core that your fan base likes is going to lead to keeping attendance at a really nice level. It's going to keep your attendance at a really nice level if you continue to liquidate your core like you've done in the past. Like I said, the Marlins can attest to that. Poor ownership. The Pirates can attest to the fact that it helps to bring fans into the games when you have poor ownership. Although, to be fair, though, the ownership is looking like it's on the right track with the new ballpark and with building up more cost control talent and a lot younger talent this time around than what they had from 2012 to 2014. But in general, I'm still skeptical. They're still showing the signs that this is going to be a team that's going to be liquidated in a couple of years, or next year even. This is what they're showing. They are the less extreme version of the Miami Marlins, and it's looking like that's not going to be much different. They're probably going to keep Matt Chapman and keep Matt Olson because they're cost control, but I suspect that maybe Chris Davis might be traded. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they fall flat. And so, I want to be wrong about this. I really do. I want to be wrong about this. I want to look back on this video and think that this was just a bunch of horrid takes, a bunch of old takes exposed, candidates in terms of takes on this video. I want to look back on this video from a year. I want to look at this back on this video a year or a couple of years from now with that sort of mentality that these are all candidates to be for old takes exposed. But it's looking like it's going to be the same thing again. It's looking like it to me. It's looking like it. It's looking like they're going to be liquidating the core again. It's looking like their game plan is going to fail once again because situational hitting, foreign concept to an organization that has gone with this mentality before and has failed with this mentality of having situational hitting as a foreign concept. Rick Tittle actually put out a pretty accurate tweet. I mean, you can't expect the fan base to come back over for one winning season after pretty much being the less extreme version of the Miami Marlins. 1 year of winning will not cure fan apathy. It will take convincement for the rest of the fan base to think that this team is headed on the right track, to think that this organization is headed on the right track this time, and that they are going to try to sustain it. It is going to take years of that. It is going to take years. It is going to take winning. It is going to take a new ballpark. It is going to take all that they need. It's going to take all that they need to move forward and to pretty much reestablish themselves as a baseball team in Oakland, because the Raiders are leaving, the Warriors are going to SF, the Sharks are going to stay in San Jose. I mean, San Jose is where the hockey market is in the Bay, but the A's, they're up. For Oakland, they're up. So, make us proud. That's pretty much all I want to say. Make us proud. Do I think that they can win a World Series under Billy Beane? Honestly, I'm giving him one more chance. I'm giving him one more chance. If the core has to be liquidated once again, then I say he needs to be Gonzo Alonso. Giving him one more chance. Giving him one more chance. If he fails again, if the core has to be liquidated again, then time to fire him. Time to find a new GM. Time to find somebody who can embrace the situational hitting. Somebody that can draft talent that can fit that mentality of situational hitting, doesn't just rely on home run hitting, and can develop talent for years to come so that they can replenish and recycle talent properly and be able to compete. Organizational philosophy, just something that can keep you competitive. Even if you have some seasons where you're losing, you can return to a strong season if you do the right moves with the right organizational philosophy. Hopefully these acquisitions are leading to a change. I mean, they're having once again a quiet offseason. Not too fond of the Marco Estrada acquisition. I mean, he hasn't been good. Even for like the couple of years that he was good for Toronto, he kind of overachieved. His FIP was a lot higher than his ERA, and I think there was at least one season where that was the case. Jurickson Profar, I like that acquisition. He's a guy that is a little bit more cost control, and he pretty much is going to cost less than Jed Lowry, and he can play in different positions. So I like the Jurickson Profar acquisition. I liked it a lot, and in general, this team still has a lot of pieces moving forward. They have a lot. They have the pieces in place to become a team that can be a serious contender. It's all about putting it together. Billy Beane doing it right this time. Pretty much what it's about. So hopefully I'm proven wrong. I'll say that again. Hopefully I'm proven wrong. Hopefully this team doesn't disappoint me more than any of my other teams. Hopefully they can bring a World Series title to this entire fan base, which includes me, because we're tired of this. Tired of what happened after the 2014 season, because it happened before that as well. We're tired of it. All of us. So no wonder that fans are skeptical, and it took a while for them to get back into the seats and go to games this time around because, well, they're tired of it. A new stadium will help, of course, but gonna have to sustain winning in order to sustain a following, and in order to sustain a good attendance, and in order to sustain a healthy attendance percentage, I guess. So, yeah. Hopefully this works out. Hopefully I'm wrong. I'll continue to hammer that home as much as I can. And hopefully this team isn't as much of the death of me as it already is. Oh, who am I kidding? That applies to the Raiders.